what I just did is created a fresh new demo. So this is kind of the zero state of the app. And so the first thing I'm going to do here is, since I'm all alone so far, I'm going to add some of my friends and coworkers here. So to do that, I noticed there's 3 tabs across the top here. I'm going to start with people and organizations. So set up kind of this this blank organization here. So I'm going to invite some of my friends, like Ashley.
Now they all have my email.
And I'll go ahead and give her administrative privileges. And then she gets admin privilege too.
So I'll just let you guys know that I immediately received an email inviting me to join this.
Calvin does not get administrative privileges. All right, so there's my team. So next, we've already got an organization. We've got a team filled out. So I'm going to go back here to projects and issues. And let's say that we are working on a website and we need to go ahead and get set up for the review period, review and QA period. So I'm going to create a new project here. And we're going to call this Project Rhino. And then I'm going to file this project under the organization that I've created called Acme Inc. And I hit create. And looky there, I've got some things to do. So what we're going to do in the rest of the demo is kind of go through each of these, and then we'll log a few issues. And I'll talk about how we specifically use it at Simple Focus along the way. So the first thing to do is set up milestones. So milestones are date-based periods where or phases for a project. So for instance, we often set up milestones for internal review. And then you can assign a due date. So I'm going to pick August 14th. So we got a couple weeks. And then I'm going to create a client review. And we'll put that a week later. We'll do a final QA a week after that. And then finally, we'll do a launch. And let's say we're going to launch this on September 1st, because that's a nice round date. So these correspond to phases in our project timeline. So internal review would be when we're looking at it internally, making sure that everything works properly, looks good, and then we would hand it off to the client. We'd invite them to Sifter at that point to start entering their tickets, and then back to us for final QA and launch. So that's part of our process. So let's see, done with that part. So I'm going to go back to my gear icon here. Whoops. There we go. I go back to my project, and you'll see my milestones have been set up. So now Sifter tells me it's time to create categories. Now, categories are, we use categories for different parts of a website or an app. So usually we start with a global, which, something that affects everybody. I can assign a default assignee here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give myself a little more control. But let's say if Caitlin were to be handling all the global issues and Calvin were to handle all the homepage issues and Ashley all the team page issues, I could set that here, but I'm not gonna do that right now. So let's see, we'll set up global, we'll set up homepage, we'll set up about, and let's do a contact page. All right, so now that's set up. Again, I go back to my project and my to-do list has shrunk. So the next thing to do is to invite team members. So I've set up my team members in the organization, but I haven't actually assigned them or invited them to this project. So I'm going to do that now. So I see here are the people on my team. Go ahead and invite them all. If I wanted someone else to join, I could hit this button here. But I think my team is good for right now. So I check that box and I update permissions. So that's done. Go back to my project. Have a few more options. Sifter has some integrations that are built in. We've got Beanstalk, Bitbucket, GitHub, Slack, and Zapier. You can read all about these. Some of these are really great, really good way to kind of tie them in with your existing tools. For this demo, I don't really want to set anything up, so I'm just going to go back to my project, but they are available for you. So then I can check my project settings just to make sure everything's good. This is kind of where we've been working, so we can go past that. There's one more thing in the setup. You can submit issues to Sifter and specifically to this project using this email address. It even has a handy dandy vCard download, so I can import it directly into my contacts app. So once that is set up in contacts, I can just email issues directly from my inbox, and they will populate in Sifter. A pro tip that I like to do is when you set the contact card, make sure to name the project like Rhino Sifter, and that way it's a shortcut when you're typing it in the inbox. You can just quickly get to that address. You don't have to remember this big long string. So here, and it is time now to start entering tickets or logging issues. So let's say I've reviewed this website. I've noticed a few things. I'm going to go here and I'm going to click new issue. And I'm going to say logo and footer doesn't render in Internet Explorer 6 because of course. And I could write some additional context like checked in cross-browser testing using Windows Vista profile. Sifter also has Markdown. It supports Markdown. So if I wanted to use some common Markdown things like I wanted to bold this or italics. I hope I've got that right on the demo, but I can preview by clicking this handy dandy preview button and look, I did it right. You can also click this little tooltip for formatting tips. It'll give you some more information there. So I can also drag and drop or browse for screenshots or any supporting screen caps or anything like that. Something that's really handy. I found that the more information that you can provide here in this summary, the better. So that's kind of the main thing. And then over here, I've got some different fields that I can choose from. So I can set the priority. That's pretty high. And let's see, Caitlin's going to take care of that for me, and it's part of our internal review, and it is a global issue. So I've got everything how I want it. I'm going to create the issue, and there it is. So let me create just a few more so I can show you how some of the filtering works. Increase, this is something I say almost every time we design something. Increase padding on right and left. This one is not as important. We're gonna have Calvin take care of it. And let's see, let's make this part of, let's pretend that this is a client submitted thing here. If I want to speed up my workflow a little bit, instead of create issue, I can hit create and add another, and that takes me right back into an edit screen. So I'm going to say, let's see, let's add a slider so that everyone can see everything at once. This is critical, gotta happen. And Ashley's gonna help us put that one together. And that's part of our final QA for some reason. And then let's see, make the logo bigger. I'm gonna take care of that one. That's gonna be my launch thing, and that's gonna be on the contact page. I wanna make the logo bigger. And I'm gonna actually make that a low priority. All right, so here is my list of issues that I kind of quickly generated. You see by default, they are sorted by priority. And I know that because this priority filter is bold. So this is showing me, by priority, how many issues I have, what are they? If I wanted to add more, before we get into the filtering, let's talk about managing tickets. I can, at this point, now that's been created, I can go in and add to it. So I can say, start by making it 50% bigger and see what looks right. And I've actually decided I don't have time for this, so I'm gonna ask Calvin to help me out with this. I'm gonna reassign it and update the issue. And at that point, Calvin's gonna get a notification. He's gonna get an email that has my comment along with a link to view the ticket on Sifter. So if you can imagine, this is a good way to really stay organized and keep the communications centralized on a ticket and an issue and ticket level. So you don't have these long email threads that take twists and turns. It's everything that Calvin and I need to communicate about making the logo bigger is going to be contained in this ticket. And I think that's probably the absolute best thing about Sifter, in that it's very structured and organized. Similarly, Ashley or Caitlin or Calvin can come in here and add information for me to come in and take action on a ticket. You can also, of course, change the any of these fields here. So you can change what milestone is associated with, priority, all that kind of thing. So if a client were to come in and say, actually, no, this is not low priority, this is critical, I can do that, and you'll see it updates here. All right, so now let's get into filtering. So by default, you start with priority, but I've got any option here to filter by these different things. So status is things, the statuses that are available are open, resolved, and closed. So if a ticket is actively being worked on, it is open. There's also a fourth status. We'll get to that in just a second. If a ticket is actively being worked on, it is open. And then the way we do it at Simple Focus is if I were to pass this off to Calvin or assign it to Calvin, he makes the logo 50% bigger. He would mark it as resolved, and then he would assign it back to me. And you'll notice now we have a new status category here. So this is resolved. So this says Calvin thinks he's solved this. And then our process is that I will go in, since I opened the ticket, I will go in and verify that the logo is bigger and it looks okay. And if so, I will mark it as closed. And you see the status just updated to closed. So this is a good way to kind of work it through the different stages: open, resolved, and closed. I mentioned the fourth status. The fourth status is reopened. So let's say that we come back and the client says, actually, it's too big. I can reopen it. Assign it back to Calvin to fix. And then we have reopen. So just another kind of way to see how issues move through each status. Can also sort by assignee. It's pretty self-explanatory. Can sort by who opened it. So these are all mine, but if Calvin had some and Caitlin had some, then there would be more entries here. You can sort by subject, which I think this is alphabetical order. Category is one that I use a lot. In this example, we're having theoretical pages for our theoretical website as categories. So I can see, okay, we've only got one change to make on the contact page. So let's go ahead and get that knocked out. Just another way to kind of slice and dice the information. Milestone and due date. So this is, if you're thinking about the project through the lens of when it needs to be done, this is a quick view to see how many tickets are left for each milestone. And we'll talk more about milestones in just a minute. And then finally, date created and date updated. So just another prism through which you can filter these tickets. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory, but you've got some options over here to filter by issues that you're following or not following. There might be issues that are submitted by Ashley that get assigned to Calvin that I'm not automatically or don't need to follow. So that's what that is referring to there. Can also filter by, if I only want to see what we've done, what's been closed today, I can click that. Or if I want to see only open and resolved, open and reopened, sorry, do that. And it's going to leave out the ones that have been resolved or closed. So as you start clearing off the list, you don't need to see resolved and closed. You can very quickly turn those toggles off. If you'll notice here, these are additive, in other words. So I can keep the filter for only open and only reopened and only critical. So when you have hundreds of tickets, it's really important to have a lot of options to drill down to the view that you want to see the most. And so this is just another way to kind of get a little more specific and make sure that you're seeing exactly what it is that you need to see at any given time. A little bit tough to demo because we only have a handful of tickets here, but anytime that I feel like I've gone too deep in the app and I'm not seeing what I want to see, I can hit this handy dandy reset filter button, which is basically a big escape here. And it will take me back to the default. It'll clear all my selections over here for the filters. So as you can see, it gets really powerful when you can set up these views and drill down to exactly the information that you want to see. So yeah, I think that's one of my favorites, especially when we are managing, for instance, like a retainer project where there's requests or tasks that come in over a period of months and the backlog really starts filling up. It's very easy to move issues between different milestones or categories and really get a sense for how much progress our team is making along the way by using these filters over here. So if I click on the issues, this is another way to just kind of quickly surface some information, some additional filters. So I can see how many tickets are mine. We've got 4 total. I can then sort by newest issue or recent activity. I can see workload. This is basically by assignee. I can also see which ones are getting a little stale. Hopefully not any are getting stale here. So those are my sorting options. So I do want to point out milestones. This view here, this milestones, this is going to show me when I've set the milestones for each phase, and also how many tickets are currently assigned to that phase. So right now, it's a pretty small project. We only got 1 ticket in each of these phases. And let me add another one for demonstration purposes. Contact form entries aren't getting delivered. And we're going to call that client review. Okay, so now you see that client review has 2 issues. If there were any that were assigned to me, it would show up here, or any unassigned, it would show up there. And then I can click on that bar to see. So this is about as close as Sifter gets to statuses for each milestone. It's just a quick little visual indicator for how many of those are open versus closed. Close that one. Yeah, so you see now in client review, we have 1 closed and 1 open. So there's some nice little visual indicators of progress for each milestone there. Just a couple other things. I can download all the tickets as a CSV, which is pretty cool, especially for reporting purposes. And if I ever wanted to print this page for any reason, I can. Other things, search is very good in Sifter. So I found my two issues that were related to the logo. I knew there were 2, and there they are. Okay, so I've set up my project. I've created some issues. I've got my organizations all set up. The one thing we haven't covered today is settings. So let's dig in there, see what kind of trouble we get into. So I've got my username here, email, pretty self-explanatory. This email is actually pretty important. You want to make sure that's correct because that is going to be the email that's accepted as a from address when you're creating issues by email. So just double check that that's right. There's an option to open links in a new tab, which I would recommend doing that. It's helpful. You can check your time zone. You need to change your password. That's where you do it. I start weeks on a Monday. That's just how my brain works. So I'm going to update my information. And I can see it's been updated. So another thing you're going to want to make sure to configure is notifications. This is obviously where you can pick which emails you get from Sifter. And there's lots of issues, lots of options here. The default is what you see here that's checked. But let's say if there's hundreds of issues and the team's working through them, I might not want my inbox to get flooded for every single thing. So I'm going to uncheck status changes or priority and milestone and category changes. I'll keep comments and I'm going to keep it confined to just the issues that I'm following. So I can do that. I can also get an email that's a kind of a digest email daily. I think that happens in the morning or maybe the afternoon, one of those, I'm not sure. Anyway, but I want to make sure to save and see if my notification options have been updated. A lot of times I will come in and edit these at different stages in the project. So when tickets are really going fast, I'll dial down my notifications, but maybe early in the project, I might want a little bit more. We went over the connections briefly earlier, but this is where I would get those set up. If you have any trouble, I would highly recommend accessing the help, or there's also some documentation that you can get to as well. And then finally, plan and billing. So any account level management happens here. Lots of help content for Sifter. So I would encourage you to check the knowledge base, not only when you're having issues, but just maybe is a better way to learn how the app works. It's a great resource.
All right, thank you, Matt. That was a great walkthrough of how to get started with this software. One question I have is, if you have multiple projects, can you get a view of all things assigned to yourself in one view?
This is a staging account where I've got a bunch of issues here. I'm in 6 projects here. These green numbers, this shows I'm in, I have 20 issues in this project. I have 4 issues in this elephant project, and I have 6 issues in this peacock project. And then there's a whole bunch of unassigned issues across all projects, and then a whole bunch of other issues that are assigned to other people in all those projects. And if I go to this issues drop down, I can see everyone's issues, unassigned issues, or mine issues. And if I click on just mine, the word mine, it shows me all of my issues across all projects. And it'll show the project name here. It just lists them, and you've got the same sorting and filtering as inside of a project.
So in essence, that's your to-do list from critical, from most critical to least. Okay.
Yeah, I can do it by priority, or you can group it however you want, whatever makes sense for you.
All right, so if you have a priority project, then you could sort them by project and see what your most critical issues in that priority project are. Excellent.
Yep.
Is there a way you have an ability to like maybe compare your process with your team pre-Sifter to post-Sifter that tells us what improved?
before we started using Sifter, when a website or an app was ready for the client to review and give us feedback, or even when we were reviewing it internally for quality assurance, the way we got feedback was very disorganized. Most of the time we would get emails that, you know, would start talking about this one issue and we'd work on it, but then 2 or 3 other issues would be hiding out in an email that's a couple threads later, and it just got really hard to keep track of what was done and what still needed to be addressed. It was hard for us internally, but it was also hard for clients to keep track of that as well. And so, you know, oftentimes it was an email, sometimes it would be something like a Google Doc or some other checklist, but still not nearly as efficient as we found the process going when we use Sifter. So the big value for us is, again, bringing organization to that process. So there's the back and forth still happens, but the back and forth is centered around the issue itself, and it allows us to stay disciplined and keep our eye on resolving the issues as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And it also gives the client full transparency into, you know, how quickly we're able to resolve issues, and not only how quickly we're resolving issues, but what we're doing to resolve the issues. So, you know, it's brought a lot of structure into that process that was previously very unstructured and confusing.
Great. And then the follow-up to that is, are you able to separate, if you're using it with a client, you set them up as an organization, you can basically decide what they see and what they don't see?
Earlier, I set up different milestones for phases like internal review, client review, QA, and launch. And those roughly mirror our own internal phases. Typically what we do is we will not invite the client to our Sifter while the site is in internal review. So that's when we're putting the site or the app through its paces and, you know, blowing up the punch list, making sure that it's absolutely ready for the client to get in there and give us their feedback. So we'll generate a bunch of tickets and resolve those tickets and close them out. And then at that point, what I'll typically do is go in and create an organization for the client. So that's the very first step we did in the demo, but that organization, I'll name it after the client and invite our client contacts to start submitting tickets directly into Sifter. What that does when the client is on a separate organization, we now have the ability to, they can send and submit issues directly into Sifter, but Sifter has a feature called internal discussion only, I believe. Let me make sure that that's the right, internal only. So there's a little checkbox on the ticket that says internal only. And if that checkbox is clicked, only the people in my organization, so only my team, can see the messages and the ticket, the communication that has that designation on it. So what that does is, let's say a client asks us to rework a page, but we're not really sure why or what they have in mind. So we can have kind of a back and forth that the client doesn't have to see, and then using that internal only tool. And then once we get clarity on that, you know, we can then continue the thread of that issue in resolving that. So just another tool to kind of make sure that the right people are getting the right communication on each issue. One of the things that I've found to be very helpful is that once that type of communication gets into Sifter, that your team and you encourage the client team to stay disciplined to keep that conversation in Sifter. So it becomes less effective if you start an issue in Sifter and then go out to email or Slack to start discussing it. The real magic of Sifter is that it's, again, centralizes everything. So staying disciplined with the back and forth of issue tracking and keeping that conversation in Sifter will go a long way in making Sifter more effective for you.